Hello dear students, I hope you are enjoying your summer break. Today we are starting our online revision for grade 10 for the IGCSE. So the first class in our revision will be about the coordination and response. So in the coordination and response, the main idea here in this class is about how do we coordinate our all movement. Currently I'm trying to move, so how do I control this movement? How can I move my hands, move my legs, speak? All of these are related to our coordination system, which is called the central nervous system. So the main idea here in this class is about the central nervous system, which include the brain and the spinal cord, which are all composed of the sensory cells and the motor neurons, sensory neurons, and so on. We will see what's next in this class. So, in general, the process of coordination is the way in which all organs and systems in the body can work efficiently together. So, how do we regulate the process of, let's say, movement of our muscle? The muscle, how it moves. It needs blood. It needs to be the carbon dioxide needs to be taken away, and the oxygen has to be delivered. We have the oxygen that should be delivered using the lungs. So we are breathing, we are taking oxygen, we are transporting this oxygen into the muscle, and then the carbon dioxide have to be removed from the muscles. All of these are being coordinated by the coordination system, which is the central nervous system. So coordination, as we mentioned, we have different kind of activities. Here we can see kind of movements. We are using the eyes to detect that, for example, here in this athlete, he can see that the ball is coming, and then he should give a response to that, which is, let's say, movement of the hand using the tennis and so on, movement of the legs, movement of the hands, and so on. All of them should work together, should be coordinated together in order to produce the final movement, which is the ball movement, or hitting the ball, kicking the ball, and so on. So the coordination of the body is brought about by the nervous system. So as I mentioned at the beginning, the main organ that can control this process is the nervous system, which is made of brain and spinal cord. So nervous system is usually coordinate or work together with other organs of the body by sending nerve impulses. Nerve impulses, which are usually electrical impulses or electrical signals that are transported throughout the body using electrical signals using the neurons or nerve cells. So, in general, all the processes that are regulated by the body starts with a stimulus. Stimulus, what is the stimulus? Stimulus is something or a change that occurs in the environment around us. Something moved, we are looking at this thing. So at the beginning, something moved, or change in temperature, or something harmful, something painful touched our body. So all of these are considered to be a stimulus. Now, in order to be able to detect this stimulus or different stimuli, we should have receptors. Receptors like what? For example, for sensitivity, we can touch with our hands. So when we touch, this is kind of sensitivity, which it depends on receptors that are found in our fingers, for example. Another type, we are looking at someone, we are looking at something moving. So this thing that is moving, we can detect this kind of stimulus using our eye. So again, we have a receptor in the eye. We have receptors in the nose that can detect smells, different smells. We have receptors in the tongue that can detect different tastes and so on. So all of these are receptors. So the stimulus have to be detected by a receptor. Then the receptor should send a signal into the coordinator. What is the coordinator here in this case? It's the brain. The brain and the spinal cord are the coordinator for this coordination response in the central nervous system. Anyway, Now, the coordinator, in order to regulate the whole process, have to send signals back into an effector. Now, the effector is the next step. The effector is not necessarily the same as the sense organ. It can be any, let's say, a gland or a muscle. Usually, the effector is a gland or a muscle. The brain can send signal to the effector so that this effector will give an action, will make a response at the end. So the last step is the response. Let's take an example. A stimulus, we have a hot object. We touched a hot object with our hands. So what happened is that it's very hot, so the receptors in the hand felt that it's very hot. So it sends signals back to the coordinator. Now what will happen in the coordinator? It will send signals back to the muscles, for example, so that this muscle will be informed to give a response, which is moving the hand away from the hot object. It's usually very fast. This process takes milliseconds, but at the end, it's coordinated by the brain and the spinal cord. So we have different kinds or types of receptors, different receptors that have different or that can detect different stimuli. So the first one, eye. Normally we have an eye, and this eye is considered as a sense organ that can detect a stimulus, which is the light. Now, the light can be detected by the eye, which usually the receptors are found in the retina. We'll see those later. In the retina, we have detectors for the light that can convert the light energy into electrical impulses that goes to the brain, as we mentioned, to the coordinator, then to give a response. So we were talking about, as mentioned in the ear, we mentioned that the ear is an organ that can detect two types of stimuli. It can detect the sound, normally we hear, so the ear is, can detect the sound, which is a stimulus, and also can detect mechanical type of stimuli, which is the ear is considered the organ of balance. Now, when we close our eye, for example, and we stand alone without anything, and we are closing our eye, we might fall to the, let's say, when we lean to the side, when we lean to the front, we might fall, but we are not falling. Why? Because there is another organ that can inform the brain that we are leaning forward. We have to give a stronger contraction for the muscle to prevent falling, or we are leaning backward and so on. So the organ that can detect the mechanical stimulus is the ear as well. So the other organ that can detect also or contain receptors is the tongue. It has the taste buds that can detect different chemicals, sweets or sour or different kind of chemicals that can help us to detect the taste. The other organ is the nose. The nose. The nose is the organ for smell. It can detect different type of chemicals, again, in order to detect or to feel, to sense different types of smells. The other one is the skin. Skin contains a wide range of detectors, not just one type of receptor. It can help or can detect the touch, the pressure, the pain. Different mechanical stimuli can be detected by the skin. When we touch something, so this is done by the receptors found in the skin, under the skin. Pressure, how much pressure are being made on our skin, also can be detected by the skin. Pain receptor, when we have something painful, it can be detected by the skin, and so on. In addition to those receptors that can detect different mechanical stimuli, there is also the temperature receptor that can detect whether this is hot or cold. We have receptors here that can detect this type of stimuli. At the end, we have another type of receptor is inside the muscle. There are stretch receptors. When the muscle is being stretched, usually there is a receptor, which is a stretch receptor, that can give an information to the brain that the muscle is being stretched, so that the brain will send signal back to the muscle to be contracted to prevent damage to the muscle after the stretch. So, in general, as I mentioned, all of this being controlled by the nervous system in humans. The nervous system, and again, as I mentioned, is composed of the brain and the spinal cord. In addition to the brain and spinal cord, there are the nervous system, or the nerves, different nerves. Okay? So the brain and spinal cord together, they make the central nervous system, and all of this being coordinated through nerve cells, which are called the neurons. So nerve cells or neurons are making this central nervous system. Now, we mentioned that there is a stimulus that can be detected by neurons, then it goes back to the central nervous system to be coordinated, and then the signal is sent back into the effector. What are the effectors? The effectors are either muscles or glands that can respond to either electrical impulse using, let's say, different kind of nerves, or could be responded to a hormone, so that the hormone also can affect these effectors. So when there are some muscles, when they receive that hormone, they might contract or relax according to the effect of this hormone. So these are considered to be effectors. Now, we have two main types of neurons. The first one is called the motor neuron. Motor neuron is the nerve cells that take the impulses from the brain into the effector. From the brain into the effector is considered, or it's called, the motor neuron. The second type is called the sensory neuron. What's the sensory neuron? Sensory neuron is the nerve cell that take the signal from the receptors all over the body, back to the central nervous system, back to the brain, back to the spinal cord. This is considered to be a sensory neuron. So these are the two main types of nerves in the body. Here we have an example. You can see here the skin, under the skin, different type of receptors. Could be a touch receptor, could be a pain receptor, could be a heat, temperature receptor. So these receptors will be collected all together and will return back into the spinal cord or to the brain by the sensory neuron. This is the cell body, and then there is the nerve ending that can connect to another nerve cells and another nerve cells and so on in the brain to be coordinated and to do its job effectively. So all these nerve cells that are outside the central nervous system, which is the brain and spinal cord, are called the peripheral nervous system. So the central nervous system is the brain and spinal cord. The peripheral nervous system is all the nerve cells around the body. So nerves, as we mentioned, in general, we have two main types. We call them the neurons, two types of neurons. One of them is the motor neuron, which is the cell body is found in the central nervous system, and its extension is outside the central nervous system. We call it the axon, which is a cytoplasmic projection from the cell. It's outside and it's usually connected to an effector. So here we have an effector, which is either muscle or gland. Now, usually the direction of impulse is only in one direction due to the arrangement and due to the function of this type of cell. Now, this is the nerve cell or the motor neuron. The second type is the sensory neuron. From the sensory neuron, here you can see that, again, it starts with a receptor and then it moves through the axon. Cell body is either in the spinal cord or nearby, or even outside the central nervous system. Then in the central nervous system, there is the connection with other nerve cells in the brain or in the spinal cord. So these are the two types of nerve cells in the body. Now, the nerve impulse, actually the nerve impulse itself is an electrical signal. So electrical signal, normally we feel different type of stimuli. It might be heat, cold, light, chemicals, as we mentioned before. So all these type of stimuli should be detected by a receptor. What's the function of the receptor? The function of the receptor is to convert these different types of energies into the electrical signal. So at the end, we will get an electrical signal that can be carried out by the nerve fibers, the neurons or the nerve fibers. So sensation only felt when the nerve impulses reach to the brain. So we have to deliver this sensation into the brain. It's usually delivered, it's usually delivered as a nerve impulse, and usually this nerve impulse is an electrical signal. Whether it is, let's say, the chemical that we taste by our tongue, it will be sent to the brain as an electrical signal. The light reaches to the eyes, and now the eye will send an electrical signal, again electrical signal. So it's electricity or kind of changes in the electrolyte distribution in the nerve cell. So at the end there is no difference between the electrical signal from the eye, from the ear, from the hand, from any other sense organ in the body. All of them are the same in the composition or in the electrical signal itself. Now, we are able to tell where the sensory impulse have come from and what it caused only because they go to different part of the brain. Now, we mentioned that we can know now that this is a taste, this is a touch, this is a vision, this is an eye that works in this way. Now, how do we know that as long as the nerve impulse is the same? So how do we know that this is, let's say, a vision, and this is a smell, and this is a taste? It's because they are distributed, or they are being coordinated in different centers in the brain. Could be a center for vision, could be a center for taste, could be a center for touch and pressure, and so on. Different centers can give us different information about where these are being coordinated. Now, so we were talking about the sense organs. We mentioned that receptors are found in the sense organs. Sense organs, in general, they are sensory cells, or let's say cells that have receptors, areas that have cells which have receptors that can detect a specific stimuli. Different type of stimuli like light, touch, or temperature, chemicals in general. We have wide range, as we mentioned, of sense organs, including the ear. So the ear responsible for two types of stimuli, which is first of all is the hearing, the sound, and the second one is coordination of balance, which is being coordinated in the inner ear, as we can see here. Second sense organ is the eye, that can detect light, for example. Again, it's composed of particular tissues that are responsible for converting the light energy into an electrical energy and nerve impulse to be sent to the brain. So this is the anatomy of the eye. We'll take it in more details. The skin have wide range of detectors or receptors on its surface that can detect different kind of stimuli, again, like touch or temperature or pressure or pain and so on. So the first sense organ that we will talk about is the eye. The eye is composed of different tissues, as we mentioned. Now, let's just take an overview about the names and the function of each one of them. So, the first one, for example here, the outer layer is called the sclera. It's the white of the eye that we can see. Sclera is found all around the eye, but in front of the eye, in front of the pupil, it's changed into something colorless. It's not white. So this colorless is called the cornea. So sclera and the cornea here. The cornea itself is covered by the conjunctiva. This conjunctiva has a protective function for the cornea. Now, it's all around and it's connected to the muscles. Now, what's there inside? Inside there is, Now, inside the sclera, there is the choroid. The choroid, again, it's a layer that contains the blood capillaries. Blood capillaries that can deliver oxygen, glucose, and nutrients and get rid of waste materials. So this is the choroid that contains these things. It's all around the eye again, and in front of the eye, it's changed into different composition. One of them is the ciliary body, ciliary muscle, and the iris. The iris is the colored part of the eye. You can see it here, but in fact it's a circle all around. If we have an in-front vision, it's a circle. This is the iris, which is the colored part of the eye. This is the ciliary body, and this is the ciliary muscle. Ciliary muscle is connected to the lens by the suspensory ligament. These are the suspensory ligaments. So, this is the outer layer. What else? We have the inner layer of the eye, which is the retina. This is the retina. It contains the receptor. This is the most important part of the eye for our today's lesson. It's the retina, which contain the receptors. We call them the cones and the rods. Cones, rods. Cones and rods. Well, the retina itself have a particular important points. All over the eye or all over the retina there are the cones and rods, while the fovea have highly dense cones only. Highly dense cones only. While the blind spot have no cones and no rods at all. It's the area for the entrance of the optic nerve into the eye. In this empty space, actually it's not an empty space, there is the vitreous humor that can help to keep the shape of the eye and control the process of light refraction. And in this area there is also another type of liquid which is called the aqueous humor. Aqueous humor responsible for again controlling the process of refraction of light. So it can be controlled in a particular way in order to focus the light onto the fovea to be seen in details. Now, if we look at the eye from the front, we can see that again, here we can see the iris. This is the iris. The empty space, the empty hole is called the pupil. It's an empty, if we remember here, this empty area is the black dot in our eye. This empty space, so that the light can get in through this pupil. The iris outside, the sclera here, usually the cornea is in this place or this position, but it's colorless, so we cannot see it here clearly in this picture. And in addition to that, there is the lacrimal glands that can produce some, let's say, the tears that can wash out and clean the body, the eye. So we'll complete in the next lesson. Thank you.
خلاص؟
ما بعرف توقعت انه خلص.
انا بالنسبه لي خلص، لا خلص.
تمام خلص. خلاص هاي حكيناها. الدرس الجاي بنحكي عن الفيجن. تمام خلاص ما في مشكله. انا كان ببالي نبدا من الفيجن، يعني نخلص عند الفيجن. يلا ما في مشكله. بنعمل مراجعه سريعه الدرس الجاي ونكمل.
شكرت طبعا.
ما شكرت شيء، لسه بس خلصت. ايش في بالاخير ايش بتقولوا عاده؟
شكرا لاستماعكم ومع السلامه وأراكم في محاضرات قادمه.
طيب
حصص قادمه
ممكن نضيفها هلا؟ ما انا لسه ما مخلص هذا الدرس، هو مو مقطعين؟
ومش كل 25 دقيقه درس؟
فكل واحد فيه شكر؟
كل واحد
تمام. اوكي طيب خلاص نضيفها لهذه. شغاله؟ اوكي. So this is the end of our today's lesson. I hope you enjoyed the lesson. We'll try to complete in next lesson in more details about the eye and other parts of the sensory organs. Thank you for listening.